Come on in. Welcome to Idled Out, where we talk all things Survivor. My name is Luke, and today we're talking about 5 Survivor seasons that started slow but really got better in the second half. When thinking about seasons, most fans divide them into the pre and post merge. And the post merge, when Survivor goes from a team based game to an individual one, is quite often where seasons really hit their stride and take off. And some of them, really take off, you know? For whatever reason, sometimes the gulf between the pre-merge and the post-merge is drastic, and a season that started off slowly or just outright bad kicks into high gear because the previously boring game dynamics get exciting, a poorly thought out twist is dropped, or they just plain trimmed the character fat in the first part of the game, leaving us with the most exciting characters to finish out the season. Last week I looked at seasons that had the opposite dynamic, a good pre-merge and a bad post-merge, so this week it's only fair that our boringly beginning, excitingly ending boys get their due. All that said, let's take a look at 5 Survivor seasons with a bad pre-merge and a good post-merge. At number 5 is Survivor Caramoan. Caramoan's pre-merge has 2 moods: ugly and boring. This season is probably Survivor at its trashiest. It really dips into tropes of reality TV that it had previously largely been above, especially casting seemingly unstable individuals. I don't think anyone will argue with me that Shamar and especially Brandon were not in the best headspace to play Survivor. That's where a lot of this season's nastiness comes from. Brandon becomes the first person basically ejected from the game after nearly coming to blows with Philip, and Shamar is incredibly unpleasant and drives a lot of the conflict on the fans' tribe early on. But what's worse, when these two aren't causing shouting matches every 5 seconds on their respective tribes, the season's just plain boring. Philip's Stealth R Us alliance runs the favorites, and Sherry's 6 Strong Fans alliance picks off the cool kids. Even when they target one of their own, Laura, I really can't be bothered to care. The post-swap is similarly bland. Stealth R Us gains a majority on both tribes, so there's no question who's going home. One of the fans. It's just a matter of which one kisses Philip's butt the least. In fact, there's not even a question of which tribe is going to tribal council. Hint, it's not this one. Once we reach the post-merge, however, the season really picks up. Free of Brandon and Shamar, the season lightens in tone. Somehow, I don't know how this happened, Reynolds and Eddie become extremely rootable as underdogs. The 3 amigos are a sincerely likable group of guys, and their flashy blindside of Philip with 2 idols and an individual immunity is one of the show's best. Cochran's ascent into genuinely great Survivor player is fun to watch, and human golden retriever Eddie stumbling backwards to the finale despite voting correctly. Hold on, let me check my notes here. Twice the whole game gives us a rootable underdog outside the majority all the way to the end. Of course, at Final Tribal Council, Brenda decides this post-merge has been a little too nice, so she decides to end the season on a nasty note. Earlier in the season, Dawn lost her retainer, and Brenda retrieved it for her, and then Dawn voted Brenda out. So Brenda repays the favor by browbeating Dawn into removing her retainer at Final Tribal, only to not vote for her to win the million. Gross. Well, wouldn't be Survivor Caramoan if we didn't end it on a low note. Now apologize to Brenda, Dawn. At number 4 is Survivor Micronesia. Alright, bad may be too strong a word for Micronesia's pre-merge. No pre-merge where Chet hit his head back there can be all bad, but it is one thing: long. We don't merge until episode 9, making this one of the latest merges episode-wise in Survivor history. Although this is a top 10, if not top 5 season, Micronesia's pre-merge is pretty unremarkable, to be honest. Most of the season's deservedly sterling reputation comes from the post-merge, which is one of the best in history. But Micronesia makes the cut for me because the quality gulf between pre-merge and post-merge is simply massive, even if the pre-merge is mostly just fine. Here's why. Neither the fans nor the favorites in their original tribal iteration are super exciting to watch. The dominant couples alliance on the favorites tribe is particularly unappealing to me, and most of the entertainment that comes out of this alliance in the first few episodes is mostly just Cirie making fun of it. The fans' tribe dynamic is even worse. The treatment of Kathy, Chet, and Tracy by some members of the Supermajority Alliance is pretty not cool. The only pre-merge storyline that is really entertaining at all is Joel overplaying himself out of the game by targeting his own allies for literally no reason, then getting outlasted by Chet. Imagine getting beaten by Chet. After Joel leaves, this season's post-swap section is simultaneously aimless and overstuffed. The season completely stalls out in episodes 6, 7, and 8, shoving in a Penner medevac, a Kathy quit, a Chet pseudo-quit, and frustrating eliminations of Tracy and Amy on Malakal into just 3 episodes. Thankfully, that merge is right around the corner. Even the first merge vote, a pretty by-the-books elimination, has Eliza desperately playing a fake stick with a face on it as an idol. Eliza, the stick. After that, it's Blindside City. The women come together and form the Black Widow Brigade, and systematically and iconically eliminate all of the men, starting with Ozzy in what I will always contend is the most shocking and thrilling blindside in Survivor history. Dude genuinely seemed invincible. Then they take care of Jason, sending him home with an idol in his pocket. James gets medevaced, probably so that he can avoid the shame of a Black Widow blindside. And of course, at Final 5, with an immune Eric as the last man standing, they somehow convince him to put his trust in them and give up immunity, only to turn around and vote him out in what Jeff describes as a life lesson. Oh, Jeff, who hurt you? It's an incredible series of eliminations, and all 5 of the Black Widows shine as characters as they lean into their ruthlessness.
Flossing my teeth with his jugular.
The fact is, a lengthy and unremarkable pre-merge belies the fact that iconic blindside after iconic blindside lay ahead. Cirie plays yet another all-time incredible game, but comes up just short again. Parvati goes from literal who to literal legend, and perennial runner-up Amanda becomes the official Survivor bridesmaid. Never a bride. Well, until Russell comes along a few seasons later. At number 3 is Survivor San Juan del Sur. Initially viewed as a disappointing follow-up to Cagayan by both fans and production, San Juan del Sur has had a bit of a renaissance these last few years thanks to returnee success stories in Jeremy, Wentworth, and Keith, as well as a growing appreciation for Natalie's impeccable endgame. I call it the San Juanaissance. When this season gets where it's going, it's great. But the pre-merge drags and our biggest storyline, Hunahpu constantly winning because they were speedrunning eating all their rice, is incredibly obnoxious. To make things worse, after the swap, Jeff punishes Hunahpu for gorging themselves on the rice by taking literally their entire camp and returning into the sea from whence he came. Josh, Alec, and Wes did nothing wrong. The pre-merge of San Juan del Sur also indulges in some of Survivor's worst impulses. Stunt casting of not super cool guys, time-eating locations like the Duel Arena and Exile Island, and a winner's edit for Josh so obvious you can see it from orbit. Or also maybe for Jeremy? I'll admit to loving the entire Drew Boot episode, who doesn't? But after that, the post-swap part of the game is excruciating. Anytime Missy and Baylor get their way, I'm not having a good time. And that it's at the expense of the Wentworths is frustrating beyond all reason. Why you gotta do a Freda like that? At the merge though, something magical happens. The entire pre-merge was laying the groundwork for a Josh versus Jeremy showdown. Then they are voted out back to back. And from the ashes, a phoenix rises. Natalie is in her Kill Bill era, on a mission to get revenge on everyone who voted out her number 1 ally, Jeremy, and one by one, she crosses the names off her list. The season really turns around once some of the fun characters have a little more breathing room in the absence of Josh and Jeremy. Natalie pulling off mob hits on her enemies is a delight to watch, and Keith bumbling backwards Eddie style towards being one challenge away from a win adds both chaos and levity to the season. I also love that they make Wholesome King John the endgame antagonist for his prior betrayal of Jeremy. They show his loving wine, a passion he shares with his dying father, as a major irritation for Natalie. And what's crazier, they get the audience on her side. Natalie's incredible gameplay, the John and Jacqueline relationship dynamic, and increased screen time for some of the fun little goofballs on this cast make this a fun and exciting post-merge throughout. And it's nice to see a season that began with 2 fewer women than men, and then saw 3 more women go out in the pre-merge, and with an all-woman final 3. Yeah, it's great. Just a couple of really deserving women here. At number 2 is Survivor Vanuatu. A season with a pre-merge this boring has no business ending so strongly. In fact, the entire post-merge section of this game, particularly Final 7 onwards, is so strong that it vaults this season into my top 10. Yeah, top 10, despite the entire first half. The problem with Vanuatu's pre-merge is that it's just really bland compared to most seasons, and I can identify 4 reasons why. These guys. The tribes were divided men versus women, and pre-swap Lepevi is not the most electric group of people. The 5 older men align against the 4 younger men, and thank God they picked all these guys off pre-merge. I'm sorry, but they put me to sleep. Not even the most hardcore Survivor fans out there remember Curtis, Brecken, AJ, and Dexter. These may be the most forgotten Survivor players in history. Case in point, I just made up 4 random names for these guys and you didn't bat an eye. The men head into the merge down 6-4 against the women, and the pagonging begins. The women are led by Amy, the Ice Queen of Vanuatu, a uniquely great villain in Survivor history. Cold, calculating, and uncompromising. Amy led the women's alliance with a vice grip, and at Final 7, with Chris as the only man left, it looks like she's cruising to an easy win. But Chris somehow convinces Eliza to work with Twyla and Scout, no small feat in itself, and overthrows Amy with their help. Chris continues to get deeper into the game, even though his value to everyone has worn off after this vote. Him schmoozing his way to the end is legendary. The man really did stack all his points in charisma. I mean, they definitely didn't go into balance. We get my personal favorite Final 2 and final tribal ever, as Chris and Twyla vie for the votes of the jury. Chris is a smarmy, world champion bullshitter, and he has the jury eating out of the palm of his hand as he trips over himself to dole out earnest-sounding yet phony apologies to Eliza and Julie. Twyla, by comparison, is overly honest and heartfelt in the bluntest way possible. And this jury, bitter at both of them, doesn't want sincerity. They want their egos fed. It's interesting just from a sociological perspective. I know Vanuatu often ends up as one of those forgotten seasons like Survivor Guatemala, but I promise there's a really interesting, emotionally mature, and incredibly human story being told through Chris and Twyla if you wait for it. Seriously, the post-merge of Vanuatu belongs in the Criterion Collection. What? I mean, if Chasing Amy made it in. At number 1 is Survivor Fiji. For the first half of the season, Fiji is beyond frustrating. A misguided twist in the pre-merge really goes out of its way to tank the season, and it doesn't help that, like Micronesia, this is a very long pre-merge at 8 episodes. The twist this season is that one tribe would live with incredible amenities, couches, cutlery, an outhouse, while the other tribe lived in Edge of Extinction style destitution. The producers of Survivor wanted to know, will the rich get richer? Will the poor get poorer? The answer to which, well, I'm just going to gesture around wildly at everything. Survivor's little capitalist experiment probably didn't go the way they wanted. They were clearly hopeful the poor underdog Ravu tribe would strike back at their moneyed oppressors, but they didn't. They couldn't. They had no food, shelter, or energy. Moto had food, shelter, and energy, and got more food, shelter, and energy with each reward win. They had a French press, for Christ's sake. At one point, Boo even complains that he's getting fat from eating so much. The destruction of Ravu is not fun to watch. They literally lose 12 out of 13 challenges, only winning one reward challenge in episode 7, and Moto, the rich tribe, only ever votes out one person, when they literally opted to give up immunity instead of swapping camps. I've always felt really bad for Mookie, Rocky, and Anthony. Somehow they're never in the running when we talk about the unluckiest players, but I'd put them near the top of my list. They started on Ravu and in the swap stayed on Ravu. Ravu was that bad. Remember, Moto was like, we'd rather lose Liliana than go to Poor People Beach. Of course, once we do away with this twist at the merge, the game takes off and the cast really shines. The Earl and Yao-Man-led Syndicate Alliance is one of the most likable majority alliances in history, and their outplaying of the idol-holding Four Horsemen Alliance at the merge, courtesy of Stacy of all people, suggesting they vote out Edgardo, the least likely person to have an idol, is a legendary Survivor moment. From there, the pace doesn't let up, as Earl and Yao-Man eventually end up with their backs against the wall, and Yao-Man makes the first honest-to-goodness successful idol play. And there's a reward challenge deal between Dreams and Yao-Man that, amusingly, was the most controversial moment in the history of the show at the time. Finally, it's capped off with Survivor's first and only all-black Final 3, producing one of the most dominant, satisfying, and likable winners of all time. You just gotta get through Survivor's little economics experiment to get there. What did you guys think was gonna happen? Got nothing else for ya. To help me get as rich as Moto, like and subscribe and I'll get you more Survivor content just like this. Until next time, don't get idled out.